Okay, so picture this. It's May 31st, 1984. We're at the Mecklenburg Correctional Center in Virginia, a maximum security prison. Late at night, the guard at the main gate gets a phone call, and it's an urgent one.
The call is from a prison lieutenant, and his voice is tense. There's a bomb, he says, in Building 1. In a flash, protocol is just thrown out the window. Both main gates are ordered open at the same time. A van comes screeching in, and just moments later, a team dressed in heavy gear comes out, carrying something that looks exactly like a live bomb. They load it up, and the van peeled out of the prison. Whew! Crisis averted. Or so they thought.
Because those men in that van, they weren't a bomb squad. They were inmates. And believe me, they weren't just any inmates. No, these were 6 convicted murderers from death row, and they had just pulled off one of the most incredible, most audacious prison breaks in American history.
I mean, this sent an absolute shockwave through the system. News of the escape triggered a massive statewide alert. This wasn't just a breakout. It was the largest escape from death row the country had ever seen. The men on the loose weren't some small-time criminals. These were convicted killers, guys the state had decided were too dangerous to ever live in society again.
And when you look at who these men were, it is just chilling. You've got the leaders of a murderous gang and others convicted of just brutal, senseless killings. These were men with absolutely nothing left to lose. And that is precisely what sent this huge wave of terror rippling across the state. So the first question on everyone's mind was how, right? How on earth could 6 death row inmates just walk out of a maximum security prison? Well, the answer is a combination of a truly meticulous plan and a system that was, frankly, fundamentally broken.
Now, here's a twist for you. The mastermind was a man named Willie Turner, another death row inmate, super intelligent, known for being able to make these incredible makeshift knives. He planned the entire thing, down to the absolute last second, but he chose to stay behind. He was hoping an appeal would save his life.
You see, Turner and the others didn't really need to break the system. They just took advantage of how broken it already was. The guards were just unbelievably lax. They weren't doing proper head counts, they were ignoring broken locks, and the inmates, they knew the guards' routines by heart. And their foresight was just remarkable. Get this, 2 months earlier, they had an anonymous tip sent to the prison about a bomb plot. Nothing was found, so it was dismissed. But what it did was plant a seed, which made their final bomb threat totally and completely believable. The execution of the plan itself was like something out of a movie. It was a perfectly timed sequence. First, they faked some injuries to get a few guards out of the way, thinning the herd. Then, during all the confusion of going back to their cells, one of them, Earl Clanton, slipped into a guard's bathroom right next to the control room. The guards didn't do a head count. They had no idea he was missing. And then came the signal. You're not going to believe how simple this was. An inmate just asked a guard to pass a book to James Briley. The moment Briley got it, he shouted, "Thank you for the book." And that was it. That was the trigger. The second he yelled, Clanton bursts out of the bathroom, storms the control booth, whose door a guard had carelessly left open, and he hits the switch that unlocks every single cell in the block. The inmates poured out, and they overpowered the stunned guards in a matter of seconds. So now they have control of their block. But they weren't done. Not by a long shot. This was just phase 2. Using the intercom, they start luring more staff into their trap, one by one. They'd call for help, and when a guard or even a nurse showed up, they'd be overpowered, stripped of their uniform, and tied up. Eventually, they managed to capture a high-ranking lieutenant, and he was the key to their final move. This was the checkmate. They held the lieutenant hostage and forced him to make that fateful call to the main gate. He's the one who reported the bomb and ordered the guard to bring a van and open both gates. The guard, hearing his boss's voice and remembering that bomb scare from a couple months back, he just did it, no questions asked. The inmates then grabbed a small TV, covered it with a blanket to make it look like their bomb, put on the stolen uniforms, and literally walked right out the front door. The escape was just a masterpiece of manipulation, but getting out was only half the battle. What came next was one of the biggest, most intense manhunts the region had ever seen. And they were smart about it. They didn't hang around in Virginia, which, as you can imagine, went on immediate lockdown. Instead, they drove the prison van straight across the border into North Carolina. For a few crucial hours, law enforcement there had no idea what was going on.
They found the abandoned van there, and just like that, the whole focus of the manhunt shifted states.
As the news spread, public panic just exploded. I mean, people were terrified, knowing these incredibly violent men could be literally anywhere. Gun and ammo stores completely sold out. The paranoia got so bad that some people actually became afraid of the police because they knew the escapees had stolen uniforms. It was just total chaos.
But despite all that initial confusion, a massive joint task force, we're talking local police, state troopers, the FBI, they all started to methodically close the net. It was a grueling 19-day chase. For some of them, the net closed pretty fast. Clanton and Peterson's freedom lasted all of 19 hours before they got spotted at a laundromat. A week later, Lem Tuggle was caught hundreds of miles away in Vermont after a car chase. The very next day, a starving and exhausted Willie Jones just gave up and called 911 on himself. But the most dangerous of them all, the Briley brothers, they stayed on the run for 19 days, until the FBI finally tracked them to an auto body shop where they were hiding in plain sight. And you want to hear a crazy bit of irony? When Willie Jones surrendered, he was just a few kilometers from the Canadian border. Back in the 80s, that was an easy crossing. He was agonizingly close to starting a completely new life. But hunger and desperation made him turn himself in.
So with all 6 men back in custody, the story enters its final chapter. This one's about consequences, for the system that failed so spectacularly and for the men who exploited. You better believe this escape was a massive wake-up call. The fallout at Mecklenburg was swift. 5 guards were fired, the warden got suspended, and a zero-tolerance policy for breaking protocol was slammed into place. And those main gates? Replaced with an electronic system that made it physically impossible to open both at the same time ever again.
And for the Mecklenburg 6? Well, that brief taste of freedom only sped up their end. The state of Virginia pushed their executions to the front of the line. Within months, Linwood Briley was executed. His brother James followed the next year. And over the next decade, the other 4 all met the exact same fate.
So after all of it, the meticulous planning, the incredible risk, the terror they caused, the number of inmates who actually escaped their fate was 0. Which really leaves us with one last thought, doesn't it? Was this a work of criminal genius, a plan so brilliant it was almost destined to succeed? Or was it just a desperate gamble that paid off because they found a complacent system that was just waiting to be broken? It's a question that really shows you how thin that line is between a secure prison and a complete catastrophe.